Hello everyone, my name is Shashank and I'm the Senior Technical Program Manager here at Harness, responsible for driving Chaos module adoption. In today's training video, we'll be covering some of the new enhancements that we have released over the last quarter. And before we go into that, I would like to talk about the use cases and so that we can map those features along those use cases. So the number one use cases that we have heard from our customers is that given chaos engineering is a new industry, how can our customers scale their onboarding operations so that once you onboard a new team and they should be able to understand what kind of experiments they should be executing, and how can you set up some standardization in the form of templates so that the team doesn't have to worry about uh, just so many configurations. Right. Having said that, the second use case was that when you create an chaos experiment, and let's say if you would like to fine tune that experiment with some other parameters based on your use cases, then in our previous version of product, you would have to create a separate experiment and provide different input parameters for that. And that resulted in a lot of overhead for our customers. And that is where the other feature we'll be talking about is on the runtime inputs. So the first feature we'll talk about is on the Chaos Hub and experiment templates. And then we will talk about the runtime inputs, which supports the dynamicity of providing inputs to support automation and scale. Now with that, I will quickly share my screen and we'll go back to the product. So here I'm in my Harness test account, and you can see that I have selected Chaos Engineering as my module, right? Now going back to the first use case, the use case was how can we deliver standard templates so that the teams can adopt Chaos Engineering and everyone gets the experiment out of the box and they just go ahead from day one and they can start creating experiments and measure the impact as well. So for that, in the previous version of product, we had Chaos Hub at a project level. What it means is that whatever you store, it was always there at a project level. Now with the new releases, we have moved Chaos Hub functionality into different scopes. So as you know, in Harness, we have three scopes. One is at the account level, which is a parent. What it means is that if something is created at an account level, then all the projects or the organizations can access those resources. And then we have also introduced Chaos Hub at a org level. So let's say if I go to my organization, I can see that there is a Chaos Hub at an org level, and at an account we have a Chaos Hub. And then of course, if you want to build further governance, and if you only want to create experiments for a particular project which are not relevant to the other teams, and that's where you can go and create those templates at a project level. So at a project level also you will see something called Chaos Hub. So for today's training purpose, we will be providing, like I'll be taking example for creating Chaos Hub at an account level, and because that is what our recommended approach is, so that all the teams can consume those experiments. However, if you think that account level is not possible for you, then our next best recommendation would be to create your hub at an organization level so that all the teams can who are part of the same org can still refer to the chaos experiment templates. Now having said that, going back to the account settings, you can see that we have something called chaos hub here, and in the chaos hub there is a hub called enterprise chaos hub, and this is the hub which is provided by Harness, and it has details related to all the faults. So for example, if you are on AWS, you can choose AWS faults. We have close to 50 plus faults for AWS. And then if you are on Kubernetes, then you can go and select Kubernetes faults, right, to target your infrastructure. We have also introduced another concept of proof templates where we provide out of the box validations for some of the industry standards. So, for example, if you want to check the status of a node, you want to check the replica count, you want to check the resource utilization for a pod, or you would like to measure the pod recovery time. So once you delete a pod, how much time does it take for your pods to come up? So these are the things which are present for you out of the box. You can definitely use that. Now, moving ahead, when it comes to the templates, of course, Enterprise Chaos Hub is a suite which will have a lot of faults. But when it comes to your use cases, you will have faults for your own tech stack. So, for example, you might be using Kubernetes, you might be on Linux, you might be on AWS, Azure. So based on that, we have given an option for our customers to create your own Chaos Hub. So as you can see that I have created a couple of Chaos Hub here. Now let's just go to one simple Chaos Hub of Kubernetes. Now you can, so once I go to the Kubernetes Chaos Hub, here I will have option to create experiment templates, probe templates, action, and fault templates. So just explaining each and every part. So fault templates is something which will be used when you are building your own custom logic, which is called bring your own chaos. So you might be writing a script to do a chaos, and that's where you can store these templates as part of fault templates. Then there is something called experiment templates. So experiment templates are the templates which you will create for your teams. So for example, I would like everyone in my team to run a pod delete experiment, right? I would like them to run a zonal failure scenario or maybe do a network loss scenario. So that is where I will come as an admin and I will go and create some experiment templates for them. So in this case, let's just take and create a template for a pod delete. So what I can say here is pod delete template. Okay, I can select my infrastructure, and then I will be given an option to choose a fault, and this fault template comes from enterprise fault template, whatever I showed before. And here I can select the experiment of pod delete. Right. Now going back to the configurations here, as you can see that when it comes to the templates, the advantage here is you can fix some of the inputs and you can make rest of the inputs like user defined inputs, which we call them runtime inputs, so that users can provide the details based on their use cases, right? So that they do not have to create multiple experiments. Right. So in this case, in the workload kind, we have 4 to 5 options. What we have generally seen, mostly chaos is practiced on, for Kubernetes, it is practiced on the workloads which are of type deployment. So what I will do to put that standard, I will fix this as a deployment. Now the namespace is something which can change for each team, right? Or each application itself. So I will not fix this parameter. Instead of that, I will make this parameter as a runtime input, right? And then the workload name is nothing but a deployment name, right? And this also will keep on changing based on application and teams. So I will also make this parameter as a runtime input. Now labels parameter is optional. Either you provide workload name or workload labels. Both the parameters are not required. Now moving ahead to tune faults. Now in the tuning fault, as you can see, by default, it is 30 seconds, right? But 30-second might be a very low number to observe an impact. So what I can do here is I can fix the chaos durations, right, as a standard in my organization. And I can say that I want every experiment to run for minimum of 180 seconds so that my team can measure the impact properly and understand, right? And the chaos interval parameter means is during this duration, right? If your chaos interval is 10, that means harness will try to delete a pod 18 times, right? And what we have seen as a practice, as a best practice is chaos interval is also, it would be great if you fix this parameter to the same as chaos duration. So in this case, I will fix this parameter to 180 as well, so that I only want to delete pod one time. I don't want to do it more than one time. And then the pod affected percentage. Now, what I can do here is I can leave that to user, saying that you provide your percentage. Do you want to target 100%, or do you want to target 50% or 75%, something like that? Or I can fix this parameter as well for my standardization. And I can say that, hey, I don't want you to touch these parameters. I will fix it for 50%. Right, that means so if you have four replicas, two pods would be deleted dynamically. Now, once I make these changes, and you can see that my template is ready, right? So if I go back to my Chaos Hub and I was in Kubernetes, right? And if I go to the experiment templates, you can see a template is created for pod delete. Okay, so now there are two things that we can do here is, if you are a user who has access to account level, you can directly go ahead and create experiments from this page, right? So if you click on create experiment, you will be asked to put your organization, project, and infrastructure, right? However, what we have seen in most of the cases, the users will not have admin access, right? And they will only have access to their projects, right? So for those scenarios, what we will do here is, once the templates are created by the admin team, now the teams will come to their respective projects. So now just imagine I have come to my project and I want to create a pod delete experiment. What I will do is I will go to the chaos experiment section, right? And in the chaos experiment section, rather than creating a new experiment from scratch, right, I will click on this drop down, and here I can see the option called create from template. So I will directly select this option, right? And I will go to the templates. And as you can see, my template was at an account level. And at the account level, I can see that I have so many templates which are part of this, right? So let me just select a single template called, in this case, let me select pod delete. Okay. So once I select pod delete, right, as you can see that the organization and project has been filled by automatically because I'm part of that project. Then I will go ahead and select my infrastructure and environment. So I will select my environment first, click on next, and then I will select the infrastructure for which I want to target a chaos experiment. Now, there are two options here. First option is import as a reference, and the second option is import as a copy. Now, what does it mean? So now let me show you both the options. Now, if I go and create this experiment as an import as a reference, what you will see here is that the UI first will show you that this experiment is referencing a template. That means if I want to go ahead and change any parameter, I won't be allowed to do that. Now, let's say I want to change this duration to 60 seconds, or maybe pod affected percentage to 70%. I won't be allowed to do that because I have created this experiment as a reference. Okay. Now, if I want to add a probe, probes are nothing but validation. Let's say I want to do an HTTP health point check, or I want to write a Prometheus query and add to my project, I won't be allowed to do that. Why? Because my experiment template did not have these configurations, right? And and since we use the option of reference, we won't be allowed. The purpose of reference is, when you mature into your chaos practices, you will create your experiment templates in such a way that where you will add probes into that, and you don't want your users to worry about anything, and they will just directly consume that. But however, when you start with chaos engineering, the best practice here is, rather than using a reference, you should always import your experiments as a local copy. Now I will show you another example where I will again create an experiment from a template, but this time I will import it as a local copy. Okay, so I'll click on this drop down and I will import it as a local copy. Now the experiment identity, okay, my name, I can change this. right? So once I import as a local copy, now you can see that I get a plus option. That means if I want, I can add a probe also. I can add my health point if I want to. So let's say I want to add a health point. I will do that, right? And if I go to default, if I want to change these parameters as well, I can change it because it's a local copy which is local to my project. So that is the advantage of local copy. That's why our recommendation would be, so when you are starting with Chaos, go for local copies so that the team can do the changes based on their use cases. Having said that, now the question which you might ask is, hey, I have a pod delete experiment, but this pod delete experiment, I have, let's say, four services. I have a Nginx service, I have a cart service, I have a front end, I have a back end. Do I have to create multiple experiments? The answer to that question is no. Why? Because as you can see in the fault, we have provided runtime inputs. That means user defined inputs for namespace and workload names. So that means you can provide them on the fly. So if you click on run, you will be asked to provide these parameters on the fly. Okay, as you can see that. Now the question which you might again ask is, hey, I will not remember all these parameters every time. So is there a way for Harness to save these parameters? So yes, we can do that. So let's say, for example, I have this URL, right? And I'm targeting an Etsy namespace and my workload name is, let's say, Nginx. Now, what I can do here is you can see I can save this as an input set, right? So I'll come here and then I will save this as Nginx Etsy input, right? Now, once I have saved this, right, you can see that there is another option called use an existing input set. So I will click on this drop down. I can run it like this as well. There is no problem in that. But the best practice is I click on this checkbox and then the toggle button, in fact, and then I select my input set. And you can see that I just saved this Nginx SC input set. So that is one way to do it. However, the best way what we have seen our customers do is once you have imported the experiment, you will also see an option of experiment inputs. Okay, so you go here. We have already created an input set for Nginx Etsy. I will create one more input set, right? Now let's say this time I am targeting a front end service. Okay, let's say the health point is a little different. I'm gonna just put some random URLs and the namespace, and let's say my deployment name is front end, right? I can go ahead and save this. So either if I want, I can run the experiments from this screen, right? Or what I can do here is, as you can see, the run has been scheduled. However, I will go ahead and abort it for now so that I can show you the other screen here. Now, once I go back to the pod delete experiment, and if I click on run, I will get this option, use an existing input set, and here in the dropdown, I can select, let's say I want to run it for front end. So the details would be filled automatically, and then I can click on run and the experiment will get started. So as you can see, the advantage with this design, why we have done these changes, is that so that you as a user you don't have to create multiple experiments for different services, right? So let's say if you are targeting pod delete for 50 services, I mean, without runtime inputs you would have to do it 50 new experiments, and that creates an overhead. That's why the goal here is you create an experiment, you import that as a local copy from your templates, right? So that as a user you don't have to worry about rest of the parameters, and then you create the input set, and the input set will give you an option to pass these parameters and save these values on the fly, so that you can select for which for which service, for which parameter you would like to run these experiments. So that is a flexibility option. The other change, as you can see from our previous designs, were, so now let me just show you the older design so that we can see. Now, this is an old experiment, which was on our previous design versions. And if I go to this experiment, you can see that the probes were part of the faults, right? So we have also changed that. Now, what we have done with the new design, and if you look at this new design now, the pod delete, there is no option of probes here, which was part of the fault. Instead of that, we have moved probes option as part of your experiment. So you can add something, as you can see, there is an option called probe, right? There is an option called action as well. So let's focus on probe for now. So you can add a probe before the fault. That means it will run before running your chaos experiment. You can run this fault, this probe also in parallel as well, which is a continuous mode. And to do that, the option here is control or command, and then click on the probe to add in parallel mode. So what I will do, since I'm on Mac, I will click on command, and then I will click on add a probe. And if I select this, you can see that, just a second, you can see that I have added one more validation, which is in parallel to the fault. That means when the chaos was happening, this health point will continuously check whether the service is up or not, right? I can also add something at the once the experiment ends, so that I can check whether my system has been recovered, right? Once the chaos has finished, I can again add a probe um, as well. The other point what I wanted to highlight is on the action. So what is the purpose of the action? So now let's say that the purpose of action here is, now let's say I want to do some sanity checks, or I want to trigger a load test. But for that to happen, sometimes there is a delay, right? Or let's say once my chaos experiment passes, I want to create a Jira, right? Then I can add an action, and these actions, by default, I have a delay now, but I'll show you what kind of actions you can add as well. And I can, as you can see, that the duration here is 5 seconds. You can change this as well. So the purpose of action is to do something. I mean, you can do it before chaos also, you can do after chaos also, you can do in parallel as well, right? So just to show you what type of actions you can create. So you have a delay, you have a custom script, and then you have a container script. So let's say where you can write a custom logic, build a Docker, which can do lot of things. So this gives you extra functionality to add delays into your experiments, right? Just to give you one more example, now let's say if you are building an experiment which does a pod delete, and after that it also does a CPU experiment. Now, if you're combining these multiple experiments, the best practice would be to add some delay so that the system can recover, and then you run another experiment. So that is one of the use case where you will add a delay. So let me just show you. So I'm adding a delay here. Now, after delay, I want to add one more fault. Now, let's say I'm building a single experiment which will do a lot of things. Now, let's say I want to do a network loss, right? I can do a network loss as well. So as you can see that since I imported this experiment as a local copy, that's why I was able to add probes. I was able to add actions. I was able to add another fault because this is local to my project. So this is what we have for today's tutorial session on what all the changes that we have done. In the next subsequent tutorial session, we will look at some of the high impact Kubernetes scenario. We will talk about API experiments. We will talk about zonal failures, and we will talk about other SSL and TLS certificate scenarios as well. So stay tuned and happy learning.